standing by on his computer, just if we need to get in touch with him via Zoom. Okay. All righty, very well. Jake Boswell is also standing by in the downtown area. I believe we're going to be able to go to him now. And Jake, can you hear me?
Yes, Brad, I can hear you just fine down here on Main Street.
Right, and it looks relatively quiet right now, and we had received word that there are people actually out having dinner tonight.
Yes, Brad, that's right. I think with the heat and obviously with the protest happening down a few blocks toward the river, it is a little surprising to see. But so far, normal would be the best way to describe what we've been seeing. Restaurants are open, businesses are open. Not every business. Some have made the decision to be closed this evening. But the majority of businesses, especially restaurants, are open right now. Their neon signs are up to let everyone know that they're open. There's several people sitting on patios enjoying the area. We've seen a lot of people walking their pets. It's a very, very normal evening on Main Street right now. We have seen about a dozen or so, maybe a little bit more, as far as protesters making their way north of the river, heading down from this direction toward the river, holding some signs, things like that. So we've seen a little bit of foot traffic heading toward the Four Freedoms Monument. But for the most part, where we're at, right in the middle of Main Street, things have been very quiet, very normal, and really just the heat, you can tell, is getting to people more than anything.
All right, normal is a good thing tonight. Jake, thank you so much, and we will be keeping in touch with you for further updates as they are warranted. Ironically, the location for this protest tonight is the Four Freedoms Monument. It was built in 1976, and it basically is a memorial and a monument celebrating our four freedoms. And when we walk down there on whether it be a summer night or in the fall or whenever, the Four Freedoms, the origin comes from a speech by Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the freedom of speech and expression, the freedom of worship, freedom from fear, and freedom from want. And so far, so good it appears. This is a peaceful protest along the Evansville riverfront in very, very hot conditions tonight in Evansville, and you can see some traffic driving by on Riverside Drive. Also, the Four Freedoms Monument, as you can see, those steps that lead up to it, there are 13 steps representing the 13 colonies in our country. Also, the four columns that symbolize the four freedoms, and the 50 pedestals around the monument signifying each state. And this again was built a little over 40 years ago on the Evansville riverfront, and so many people have come here not only for protests but for basically celebrating the four freedoms that we enjoy in this country, and among them freedom of speech, and that is what you are seeing right now. But we hopefully are also going to be celebrating a freedom from fear. We have a number of guests that we are trying to get on right now. Yes. All righty, very well. I'm getting some instructions from the control room, so bear with me. About 3 years ago, I talked to Reverend Gerald Arnold at his church on the west side. Reverend Arnold is a man who has seen the oppression that Black America has felt not only for the past several decades, but for centuries. He had a very enlightening perspective on what it is like not only to peacefully protest, but to live in fear. Here is that report.
That same pride, the thing that I fought for back in the 60s, I'm still fighting for that now.
His eyes have seen life-changing events. They have seen the brutal pain of history. A decade in turmoil. But the eyes of Gerald Arnold have also witnessed hope.
Because I have a dream to sit down together at the table of brotherhood.
He is now 73 years old, but shows no sign, no inkling of stopping, living by the meaning of a word prominently emblazoned behind his pulpit. The word integrity behind the pulpit?
My mother would say, once you lose that, once you lose your dignity, that's all you have. The word integrity, again, it makes you look within yourself.
He retired from a solid job at Bristol-Myers more than 20 years ago. His mission as leader of the local chapter of the NAACP outlined by the character of the people who come to his church, built in the 1800s, tucked into the nooks and crannies of Evansville's west side.
I grew up poor, and you can see my church. It's not, I don't have 3,000 members, and it's not the Taj Mahal, but I have a great sense of pride in the people that are here. This is truly the needy right here on this corner.
He came of age in the violent 1960s, growing up in Monroe, Louisiana, seeing the fear in people's eyes, the injustice they suffered simply because of the color of their skin.
That we all had uncles and people who came up missing after they were taken to jail, and we never saw them again. Even in school, when we wanted to do, like in May, you'd have May Day parades, the schools would, and the Klans didn't want us to parade. They threatened to kill us. And so as young people, those things kept inside of us boiling over, and eventually got to a point where we just decided we're not going to take this anymore.
The gash torn by the assassinations of John F. Kennedy, Malcolm X, Medgar Evers, Martin Luther King Jr., Robert F. Kennedy, still troubled this man's soul. One event, the murder of 14-year-old Emmett Till, murdered with his life ahead of him, had a particularly life-changing effect.
They found teeth and watches from African Americans who had been missing for years. This would have been
late 60s, 70s?
The late 60s or maybe early 70s, maybe.
Today, Reverend Gerald Arnold tells me he has hope. Things have changed, but much is left to be done with race relations in our country.
We have a ways to go. And not with just white people. We have a ways to go with black people as well. When you talk about integrity and dignity, somehow or another prosperity comes in and causes folks to lose a little bit of that. And so we got a lot of work to go, a lot of work to do both ways.
Well, the more things change, the more they stay the same. And joining me now is Reverend Gerald Arnold, who is the president of the local chapter of the NAACP. It's good to see you tonight, Reverend Arnold. And I couldn't help remembering you talking about your mother and the advice she gave to you. George Floyd called out to his mother while he was being held on the ground shortly before he died. Let's first talk about your initial reaction to what you saw. And you've seen so much through your years, but your initial reaction to that.
Thank you so much for having me. Obviously very upset and very shaken, and to the point that it just brought tears. And trying to control my emotions. After so many years, we've had to go through this in the 50s, and we went through it again in the late 60s, and we've gone through it again over and over, and you just get tired. And I just couldn't believe what I was seeing, although we know that it's never really stopped.
And Gerald, Reverend Arnold, excuse me, this particular event, though, it seems to have caused a worldwide conversation. There have been protests in Paris. Obviously, throughout this country, millions of people in just the last 2 weeks have taken to the streets. Could this possibly be a turning point in starting a real conversation to get something changed?
Yes. In fact, when I was 14 years old in 1958, we had our first incident of racial unrest. There was only two people, white and black. And it was primarily against white men and between white men and black men. Today, if you even look at New York City a few years back, they said there was 97 different ethnic groups of people in New York City. So you have a lot more people involved now that are in that minority category. And so there's a lot more people that are offended, a lot more people being brutalized. And so that's what now is hyping this thing and making it more aggressive, because you see Asians, female, black, white, Muslim, everybody, Jews out there in the streets together on one accord.
And Reverend Arnold, I remember you telling me that obviously you lived through some very oppressive times in the South, but this is not just a Deep South problem, racism. You experienced, you told me, up north. And what about here in Evansville? Is there a hybrid here of fear and oppression that people really don't like to talk about, but it's here nonetheless?
It certainly is. It certainly is here. It may not be as open as in some areas. I left Louisiana, Monroe, Louisiana in 1967. One, for fear that if I continued my militancy, I would eventually cause trouble for my mother and father and the rest of my family. So I moved to New York with my sister and uncles. And when I got there in 1967, guess what? I was under martial law. There was burnings and lootings and police cars being turned over, and couldn't even go out to go to work. And so this thing has followed me. And I was there in New York until 1988. One of the things that most people who were offered a job in Evansville said they wouldn't come because they felt they were still hanging people here. I have to say that I did not find that when I got here. Matter of fact, I found some areas were more open and accepting than in parts of New York.
And Reverend Arnold, you know, so many young men are angry right now, young black men. Many are hurting. I'm not going to mention this name, but there is a young man that I know in Evansville who is black. You know this individual too. He has an infectious smile on his face, but this week he pretty well broke down because this is just keeps on happening. What do you tell a young black man who has been growing up with fear, who talks usually to his parents who are very concerned about the fear of just simply going out of the house and the possibility that individual may get hurt, badly hurt, or even worse? What do you tell that person?
Well, first of all, I want to let him know that I have the same fear. At my age, I still have the same fear. And it does happen occasionally. But what has happened also is that when I've had encounters by having made friends and knowing certain people and the police department and what have you, they were able to come to my rescue. I don't know the answer, Brad. Here's the thing. We know we fought when I was a teenager. And the essence of our fight was to achieve something and to preserve it for the next generation of African Americans. And we did that. And then there's been generations since then that have done the same thing. And it seems like every 10 years we have to continue to fight every 10 years for our voters' rights, for our civil rights. And it's just I don't understand how is it that we tend to lose ground rather than gain ground.
And you were getting ready earlier this year, Reverend Arnold, the state of Indiana, the NAACP, to really look at police reform. And the chapters were supposed to meet, but along comes COVID-19 and the pandemic, and that did not happen. Tell me about that, and what could that achieve if we can make that happen? Well,
thank you. The Indiana State Conference of NAACP entered into an agreement. There's a memorandum of understanding with the Police Chiefs Association in the state of Indiana. It happened last year, and they came together and they agreed to do this with our state president, Barbara Bolin Williams, and we're so thankful to the police chiefs that they see the need to come together with the NAACP to try to make some changes, some reform. And so I was scheduled to address the Association of Chiefs of Police in this area, which would cover Spencer County, Tell City, Vincennes, and around. And of course, with the pandemic, we had to postpone it. Now we're still on, and that's going to happen. And we look forward to that because the chiefs are anxiously ready to sit and talk and look at areas where they can do better.
And Reverend Arnold, your relationship with Evansville Police Chief Billy Bolin, how is that? I know that you have talked to him many times. He has said he has talked to you many times. Where are the both of you as far as what you can do right now? You've often told me that the NAACP it's not the type of advocacy that you're seeing right here, protests, but you're basically looking at policy reform and making things happen that often that don't make headlines, but that can make a difference. Tell me about your relationship with the local EPD. Yes,
there was an incident just happened out in Woodland, Parkside, whatever they call it, where on Facebook they said that a policeman had shot an African American. Well, the chief called me, and because I would have called him, but he called me. We got together, we sat down with me, myself, and Reverend Floyd, and viewed that film and saw where the young man actually shot at the police, and the police didn't fire back. And so we were able to sit down together and view those films, and maybe we can come to the community and say, listen, that was not an accurate story. So the chief and I have been working like this for many, many years now. And I know some people don't like it. Some people, black people say, well, you shouldn't be a friend with the chief. Listen, all the fighting, all the shouting, and all the screaming is for us to be able to get into the room and to sit at the table so we can voice our opinion. That's what it's all about. And so the chief, the chief and I was on 5 radio stations the other day together, okay? And the one thing the chief said to everybody, he said, listen, Reverend Arnold and I don't agree on everything, and we don't, okay? And but he said the one thing that we do agree on is that this young man, Mr. Floyd, was murdered. And so there are areas where we can agree, and certainly there are areas where there's going to be a little tension.
And of course, we're looking at video right now, a live picture of the protest, and everything right now, Reverend Arnold, appears to be peaceful, and obviously the man that you looked up to, and millions of Americans looked up to, Martin Luther King Jr., who was the primary voice of nonviolence and peaceful protest.
Amen. Certainly, a lot of people didn't agree with it, but guess what? We're still riding on that today. And as the NAACP, we're not a violent. We don't promote violence. Basically, when the dust settles, when the yelling stops, when the fire has been put out, somebody has to get on the ground and start crafting, legalizing what has been promised, that it would not just last for the night, but it would withstand through generations and generations. And that's what the NAACP does. And we certainly appreciate anyone who peacefully demonstrates. NAACP supported this morning's rally with the White Coats Black Lives. Mm-hmm. And we were certainly appreciative that they saw a need to reach out to the NAACP for that event this morning.
And finally, Reverend Arnold, with that being said, some of these fringe groups, Antifa, white supremacists on the other side, and some of the people on both sides of this issue who are much more forceful in their rhetoric on social media. How do we bring this country together right now that appears to be more divided than ever?
Well, you know, we still, even Al Sharpton used a phrase from Jesse Jackson, keep hope alive. And I heard the word faith mentioned more than one time, faith, you know, the substance, the evidence, the things hoped for and unseen. We got to keep praying and we got to keep trusting, you know, that we can break through. And hopefully everybody will understand that, you know, that you can get more once you understand that you can get people to the table, get them down, sit, listen, and talk and exchange. May not get it all right now, but over time, if you continue that dialogue, change will come.
All right, Reverend Gerald Arnold, the president of the local NAACP chapter, and Reverend Arnold, always good to talk to you, and hopefully sooner than later, I'll be able to sit down with you once again face to face and not through a computer screen. But thank you so much for joining us tonight. And as we have reported, this rally started at about 5 o'clock tonight. And it is going on at the Four Freedoms Monument. And earlier, Jake Boswell, taking a look at Main Street downtown, said it for the most part was very relatively quiet. People were outside walking their dogs, having dinner at one of the restaurants. Some businesses were open. Several indicated earlier this week that they would be closed in downtown Evansville due to some of the, obviously some of the posts on social media. And you know, I love Evansville dearly, but it sometimes can be the biggest small town you'll ever live in because people do talk. We're going to go to Eyewitness News' Grace Haba, who is now at the Four Freedoms Monument. And Grace, you're a little bit closer to this scene, I can tell right now. What is the mood there? Give me the ambiance of the crowd.
Well, Brad, as you just mentioned, we did move across the street to give you guys a little bit closer look at what is going on here at the Four Freedoms Monument here in Evansville. And so far, it does seem very peaceful. We haven't seen anyone getting violent. We haven't seen any aggressive chants. And even though this protest is aimed at specifically targeting police brutality, we have not seen many aggressive statements being made against them. Now, as you can see, there are still multiple people here clapping and getting involved in the conversation. And there are hundreds of people here, guys. This crowd continues to grow by the moment. Many of them still have signs, some of them even specifically targeting out our own local leaders, asking them to do more, in their opinion, that they think needs to happen to target social reform here in this community. So as you can see, there are a lot of members of the Evansville community here from all different backgrounds coming together for this one cause.
Several signs there. I see one that says bad cops staying, good cops vote for change on November 3rd. I see a sign there. And I hear a lot of cheering. And are you getting any indication, is there any indication, have you heard, if this group is going to be moving down on Main Street here shortly, Grace?
Brad, that is definitely something that we are keeping an eye on. Now, earlier in the week, we did hear that a possible move could happen around the 6 p.m. hour. Again, this is still only 5:40, and at this time, we haven't seen anybody start to migrate down or closer to the Civic Center. We do know that EPD has kind of increased their presence, so to speak, around the Civic Center just in case. But as of right now, this crowd does seem to be staying here at the Four Freedoms Monument. Of course, if that does change, we will bring you guys a live picture and keep you updated on what street they are moving down as that happens. But again, Brad, right now, many community activists are just standing up, sharing their stories, and advocating for change here at the Four Freedoms Monument.
All right, Eyewitness News, Grace Haba. Thank you so much, Grace. And Eyewitness News is streaming this right now on our digital platforms, tristatehomepage.com. And we will stay with this as this protest continues. And also, if anything happens after 6 o'clock, and I say that not to say something bad is going to happen, but there have been reports that there could be, from what we have been told by credible sources, that this protest could move downtown toward the Civic Center a little bit later this evening. And as Stacey May told us earlier, the temperature right now in the mid-90s. And okay, very well. I've just been told we're going to be keeping this live picture of the protest up on the web, and my part of this, for the time being, will be wrapping up here shortly. But after all of the talk, and we cannot underline this enough, is that social media can do a lot of good things, but it also can fan a lot of flames. And there had been a lot of talk, and right now, at least here, where you see those 4 columns symbolizing our 4 freedoms, this has been a peaceful, a very forceful protest rally, people speaking their minds, calling for change. But the key word here, it has been peaceful. And one civil rights leader has said, we can be peaceful, but we are not going to be quiet. And sometimes the two are confused. But this, for the most part, has been a civil conversation and gathering of Americans here in Evansville, Indiana. Keep it right here on tristatehomepage.com. We are standing by, and we will be keeping you informed online leading up to our 6 o'clock news block on ABC 25. And of course, we go on the air on Eyewitness News at 6:30 on the CW7. For Eyewitness News, this is Brad Bird. We'll stay with this picture you're seeing right now. Keep it right here on tristatehomepage.com.
No justice! No peace! No justice! No peace!